yet because we just got to readjust some lighting. There we go. We're good. So,
Doing this.
I'm just going to go and share this in a few places. Nobody
so
would
it's
don't
not falling off the table, but things are mostly visible. That would be ideal. Oh, that is that from this?
That's
No.
probably from that.
No, it's from the streak
Okay.
up there from the window.
Yeah, it's okay. It's going to take a bit before people get in anyways. It's not our usual time for Monday Night Magic.
No, because it's not Monday night.
It is Monday.
This is a very ironic time
Well,
to do
depends.
this.
It depends where people are.
Well, I suppose, but
yeah.
we're talking about the dark.
Ezra.
And it is decidedly not very dark right now. Would be much better to do this at midnight, except I don't do as well at midnight, and at midnight
I think the one viewer is just me.
we this is, can I get this right?
Ezra. Yeah, the reason why we like to do this in the daytime or nighttime is kids are sleeping.
Yeah, there's usually less noise from the kids, and we, I was just saying thematically, though, doing the dark, it should be about midnight, but I don't do so well come midnight, especially when I got to get up early the next morning for work, so this one is going to be sort of, I already missed last week, so I don't want to push it off further.
Yeah.
But this follows right along through my binder, and actually, these three sets I find work well as a unit. The Dark, Fallen Empires, and Homelands. They're all 8-card sets. They all fall in the period right after the initial, very experimental sets with lots of crazy powerful cards.
Oh, hey Tank, how's it going?
These don't have as many crazy powerful cards as Arabian Nights, Antiquities, and Legends do. But like all the 8-card sets, including Arabian Nights and Antiquities, these 8-card sets early on were a 2-sheet pack. So you had a common sheet and you had an uncommon sheet.
I'm sorry for the screaming.
And you would get 2 cards from the uncommon sheet and 6 cards from the common sheet in each pack to make your 8 cards. So the rares were the uncommon ones that were only on the uncommon sheet once, and most things were on multiple times. The commons were usually on the sheet multiple times too, and this comes up. Do a bit of an intro here with the only land on the common sheet. I don't have a full set of the Dark, full disclosure. A lot of the well-known cards from the Dark aren't here. I don't have Goblin Wizard. I don't have Preacher or Ball Lightning, Felwar Stone, even some of the neat 0-cost cards like Tormund's Crypt and the Fountain. I forget the name of the Fountain. Dark Sphere that the set sort of has the set's name in it. I don't have those cards here.
Yeah, we're doing good, Tank. Thanks. It's just a busy day. First day of no school for the kids. So
back when I collected this was very early on again, and I added to it a little bit over time, but Dark hasn't been that easy to find for a long time. So, but basically, I've got a common set. I've got all the commons and then a handful of the uncommons. So that's what I've got to work with in terms of examples to show, and I'll just sort of talk about it and talk through my experiences with some of it. Maze of Ith was one of those unusual commons. It was a common 1, so it was on the common sheet. You'd pull it in a common slot, but it was essentially one of the more rare cards that was harder to find. And it was a very strong card in the early days. It was a card that was easy to find.
So Tank says he's got to find out how to separate cards that are stuck together due to moisture damage.
Oh, yeah, that's not easy.
Hi, Marcus. Welcome in.
Not easy at all.
He says it's a fun card. Hi, Becca. Sorry, no notice. We didn't know what time we were doing this.
Yeah, it's a fun card. It can help keep you alive from a threatening creature, and it keeps the creature untapped and doesn't actually get rid of it. It just ties it up for a while. So that can be handy to do in a multiplayer game where you don't want to make a big enemy. You just want to keep people off your back. And, yeah. But it reminds me a little bit, and I didn't pull one out to show, of another interesting thing that happened with the common sheet back in Arabian Nights.
Lucas.
In Arabian Nights, you had the desert, which was a common 11. Very common. You got one in almost every pack.
Nice, Becca.
And you also had mountain, which was a common 1 again. And originally, they were going to have the basic lands in that set, but then they decided to pull it. But when they pulled it, they forgot to take out a mountain.
Doing a video, so be quiet.
So there's a common 1 mountain in Arabian Nights that you can pull as part of their sheet as well. And it's not a very easy pull, but it's in there.
Oh, okay.
And I've often wondered if what they replaced those other basic lands with was more deserts. So originally, that's 12 cards, a common 1 and a common 11. If there were 2 of each basic land and 2 deserts, that would have been 12 slots as well. Or 1 of each basic land and 7 deserts. And desert would have still been very common, more common than any other card in the set. I'm more inclined to think it was 2 of each basic land and 2 deserts originally. And then when they decided to pull out all the basic lands, they just went crazy with deserts, and that's why there's so many in Arabian Nights. In any case, this is the one, and it's one of the more better-known cards of the set, so I figured it's a good place to start, because it's an oddball common, it's a strong card, and it's a lot of fun.
I don't know how much. I'm just going to plug the phone in so make sure it's charging and doesn't die. Oh, hold on a second.
I'll try and back this up a little so I can get the whole
Oh,
sheet
sorry
in
about
view
putting my
here.
hand in the way. I'm trying to plug the phone in. I don't think I have any that old, which is probably good, says Tank. Hey, Saren's World, how are you doing? Welcome in. I'm going to go to the kitchen to make supper. So I will be watching and chatting from there, and I'm leaving this part in Barry's hands.
Great. So, we'll start off with the front page here. I've got a booster wrapper from the Dark, and it's got, again, the blurb on the back. You know what? I'm just going to pull it out, and I'll worry about putting it back in later, so that I can show and read you the blurb about the set, which they always had on these old set booster packs. It lurks in fetid swamps and underneath the roots of ancient trees. It hides in goblin caves and beneath the Inquisitor's hood. It swims through the empty halls of sunken cities. From the depths of Dominia comes a new addition to Magic the Gathering, with more than 100 new cards to use with your Magic deck. Don't be afraid of the darkness, but what hides in the dark. So, yeah. And the Dark packs had these darker outlines with the lighter colored framing there. Can I get this back in here easily, or am I going to have to do this later? It's not too bad. Not too bad. I can wiggle it in most of the way anyway. But yeah, I like those as sort of set headers for keep a booster pack wrapper when I do try and collect. And like I said, this is just a common set for the most part, and I've gotten a few extras at the back. But you've got cards here like the Squire. Just a basic 1/2 creature for 2. Of 20 year of age he was, I guess. His stature was of even length, and wonderfully delivered. and Greet of Strength, and that's a Geoffrey Chaucer quote from the Canterbury Tales. We've got Dust to Dust. This one actually saw some play in tournaments. 3 cost sorcery removes 2 target artifacts from the game. So, again, for things that regenerated artifact creatures, this would stop them in the tracks. They wouldn't be able to regenerate because they're removed right from the game. You wouldn't be able to regrowth and get them back either. And there were a fair number of artifacts around, so occasionally you ran into decks that were quite artifact heavy, and this was certainly useful. Turvish never noticed that the amulet had vanished. It had disappeared not only from his possession, but from his memory as well. So, nice little flavor quote on that one. I'm going to see if I can do something here to make these a little bit better visibility while I'm doing this. Holy Light is another card, which I find... I used to really like this card. I used to sometimes run them, sometimes in multiples. All non-white creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. Bathed in hallowed light, the infidels looked upon the impurities of their souls and despaired. And, yeah, this was handy for getting rid of pump knights, things with protection from white sometimes, or just as a combat trick to make all your opponent's stuff that they carefully timed out their blocks shrink on them and give you quite a turn. Pikemen was reprinted in 4th edition, I think. A lot of the cards from the Dark were reprinted in either 4th edition or Chronicles, and that's where you see things like, is it Hallowed Fountain? The 0 cost, you could pay to and tap it. And that was a common in Chronicles, but in this it was an uncommon, so there's not one in here. But yeah, as the cavalry bore down, this is an old banding creature. So you could do some tricks with banding. You got to assign how the damage was dealt, and that could be very useful in combat scenarios between creatures. We faced them with swords drawn and pikes hidden in the grass at our feet. Don't lift your pikes till I give the word, I said. And that's, that reminds me a little bit of that scene in Braveheart. Bathing, Holy Light, sorry. All attacking creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. I used to try to use these with those, Abbey Gargoyles that I showed on the first video to try to get the jump on my opponent's air elementals or singular vampires, and all of a sudden my 3/4 creature, which was going to lose, would become a 4/5, which would be able to beat them and live. It was I rarely got it to work right, but when I did, it was fun. Here we got Miracle Worker, a 1/1 for 1, which at the time is, you know, but what you'd expect for 1 mana. And you can tap it to destroy target enchantment card on a creature you control. So, again, if your opponent's using things like weakness, if your opponent's using torture, if your opponent's using any sort of enchantment that locks down and doesn't let your guy untap, this could be used to free up some of those. Up at the top here, we have Brainwash, speaking of enchantments that are troublesome to enemy creatures. Target creature may not attack unless its controller pays 3 in addition to any other costs required for the creature to attack. They're not your friends. They despise you. I'm the only one you can count on. Trust me. Yes, that sounds very brainwashy. Just checking the flavor text on this one that I missed. Those blessed hands could bring Xerxes even to the most tainted soul. And there's our booster wrapper again. And then we've got Festival. Festival was fun because it sort of played the same role as a fog. Opponent may not declare an attack this turn. Play this on opponent's upkeep phase. Only after the townsfolk had drawn us into the merry celebration Did we discover their holiday rituals held a deeper purpose? And it's just a fun thematic card. Fog prevents all combat damage once people do attack. This one just keeps them from attacking. This is the sort of card that gets quite nasty if you can pull it off every turn after a while, like put it on an Isochron Scepter or something. So like I said, I think thematically this set goes very well with Fallen Empires especially. And part of that is the overlap in some of the creature types. Particularly, I mean, there's some soldier type similarities there with squires and pikemen in white. But with the red, you really see it in the goblins. The Fallen Empires has a lot of interesting goblin cards, but not really enough goblins to make them work. Whereas there are a lot of common goblins in the dark. So we'll start up here with Goblins of the Flarg, which is a 1/1 for 1 with Mountain Walk, and Goblins of the Flarg are buried if controller controls any dwarves. So this is if you're playing red goblins, you can't be playing dwarves if you're running Goblins of the Flarg. Which, you know, is just it basically can constraint on your deck construction, which isn't that big a deal. And in turn, you get a 1/1 with an evasive ability, Mountain Walk, if they happen to be playing red themselves. I used to use these quite regularly. Goblin of the Flarg, along with Goblin Shrine, were both reprinted in Chronicles. So was Goblin Digging Team, I think, unless it was in 4th edition. I'm not as certain on that one, but I know it was reprinted around the same time. Goblin Shrine, 3-cost enchant land. If target land is a basic mountain, all goblins get +1 attack. And Goblin Shrine does 1 damage to all goblins if it leaves play. So it's a bit of a risk-reward type thing. It makes all your goblins stronger and more of a threat. But if your opponent happens to have a way to get rid of it, well, most goblins are only 1/1s, so that'll kill most of them. I knew it weren't no ordinary pile of, you know, quote from Norrin the Wary, which I think they later did more with in the lore or made a card for. And next we got Goblin Rock Sled, which, much to the chagrin of many back in the day, was, it's not a goblin, because it summoned Rock Sled, so it didn't count as a goblin. It couldn't get the bonuses from your Goblin King from Alpha Beta, which, by the way, had Mon's Goblin Raiders and Goblin Balloon Brigade, 2 more 1/1 goblins, plus the Goblin King. So you could really, after the Dark came out, and especially when Fallen Empires hit, you could make a decent Goblin deck. In Fallen Empires, you added Goblin Warrens, you added Goblin Grenades. You could do some neat stuff to really get Goblins going by that point. So yeah, the Rock Sled, 2-cost for a 3/1 trample, and may not attack unless opponent controls at least 1 mountain, so it does have a downside that's pretty significant. The Rock Sled does not untap as normal during your untap phase if it attacked during your last turn, so it's slow to untap as well. Yeah, it didn't see barely any play, and if it did, usually it was left untapped to use as a blocker that could actually kill something. That just because it was, you couldn't attack, or if you could, it would be slow to untap. So, but it's a fun themey card. You can just picture the little guys getting a big slab of rock and sliding down the hill at the enemies. Goblin Digging Team, 1/1 for 1 again. Tap it and sacrifice Goblin Digging Team to destroy target wall. From down here, we can make the whole wall collapse. Yeah, boss. But how do we get out? And that quote is very similar to the Goblin Balloon Brigade, which I mentioned before. I think that one is something like, from up here we can see the whole other army. Yeah, boss, but how do we get down? That one can gain flying. So, it's fun and has that sort of little parallel in it. Next we'll have Fissure, which a little expensive at 5 mana, granted, but bury target. But as an instant, target land or creature is buried. So you can get rid of a problem creature. It can't regenerate. That's what buried means, as opposed to destroyed. And or land. And land destruction usually costs 5 at least. Love the art on the digging team. Yeah, it is nice. I like a lot of these old arts, to be honest. Um, when I think of goblins, one of the first one that comes to mind for me still is Goblins of the Flarg. I don't know why, but that art really stood out to me as well for some reason. The quote on here from Plato, "Must not all things at the last be swallowed up in death?" I remember one of my classmates in high school, who used to play Magic with us, would use that as a, random quote from Plato to try to impress one of our history teachers. But the card does have a strong effect, especially at instant speed. You don't get a lot of land destruction at instant speed. But it is a bit expensive, but it did see play from time to time. Goblin Hero, one of the biggest goblins available. Again, if you get to Fallen Empires, Goblin Flotilla was also a 2/2 for 3 with Island Walk on downsides. This one is just a straight 2/2 for 3. And again, you could give it, if you had your Goblin King out, it would become a 3/3 Mountain Walk, and you could give it more power with the Goblin Shrines and stuff. So it was a little bit bigger. If you're trying to curve, that was about what you had as an options besides your 1/1s was your 2/2 for 3s. At the early stages, that was about as good as you could do. Wasn't until Onslaught that they came up with a lot of more powerful goblins. And Goblin Caves. This one did not get reprinted in Chronicles or 4th edition. Neither did the Goblin Hero. If target land is a basic mountain, all goblins get +0/+2, so it bumps their defense. You'd usually want that on a different land than your Goblin Shrine, because if they took out that land, both would be destroyed, and it would lose the bonuses and take the damage. Whereas this one, when it's destroyed, it doesn't do damage to them. So even if they destroyed the other land the shrine was on, as long as you had this, it would keep them all alive. The stench of countless generations of unspeakable activities was enough to loose both our footing and our stomachs. Very evocative of goblins and their hiding dens. So, that's the red common sheet. Now we're on to black, and some multicolors start to show up here as well. There were 3 common multicolors, and they were the only multicolors in the set. But they were all at commons, so we'll get to those. I put them on the black sheet here because these 2 of the 3 had black in them. And, yeah, we'll get there when we get there. Bog Rats, 1/1 for 1. Again, early rat decks were basically lots and lots of Plague Rats. So this would give you, potentially, if you wanted to include it, a rat that you could play for 1. Is buffling the Goblin defense worth it, though? Normally you sack them. If they're fodder, you want to pump their damage. Yeah, it's useful to run. Making your goblins able to survive was good. If you did want to run the shrines, having one or two available as insurance policies in case they got rid of them was good. So yeah, I didn't run a full set in my early goblin decks, but I would run 1 or 2 copies just because I found them to be that useful in those 2 scenarios particularly, as a defense policy against the shrines that I was running, and as just help for any creature combat that did come up. You would be sacrificing goblins and going through them quite a bit. If you got a Warrens going, you could get quite a few of them. And that was, something else. But anyway, back to the rats. Yeah, usually they didn't see a whole lot of play. Cannot be blocked by walls. There were more walls around back then. But again, they didn't really fit, because if you were playing Plague Rats, you want to run more Plague Rats. But they could help you curve a little bit if you were short on Dark Rituals or something. Their stench was vile and strong enough, but not nearly as powerful as their hunger. Again, love the simple but evocative flavor text. Word of Binding, a sorcery, a couple of times. But at sorcery speed, basically you're just trying to get the enemy's blockers out of the way so you can attack for a bunch. And it's just not... There's better things you can do at sorcery speed for 2 black and X. X target creatures become tapped. That was the worst experience of my days, standing there helpless as they killed my whole troop. Whoa, a non-blue white tap creature, let alone in black. Yeah, it is a little bit unusual. They hadn't... The color pie, when they set it in stone, there was always been exceptions, but there were more exceptions early on because it wasn't really as solidified as it became later. Then we've got the Merc Dwellers, 2/2 for 4. When attacking, Merc Dwellers gains +2 attack if not blocked. So if it gets through and they don't bother to block it, it deals them 4 to the face instead of the 2, which is nice, but if it comes to actual creature combat, this isn't very impressive as a 4-cost creature. When Ragnaron unsealed the catacombs, he found more than the dead and their treasures. So yeah. Let's see. I do remember playing with this very early on, but I think it was one of those cards that got cut after I found a few more efficient and better creatures to work with. There's a gap here because I used to have a rare there that I just shifted to the back so it would be all commons. Marsh Gas. All creatures as an instant get -2 attack until end of turn. So again, you could use this like a mini fog. You could use this to mess up their plans with how things were blocked and come out ahead sometimes. It was a neat little trick, but again, eventually you find better things. Come right out of the ground. If you can smell it, it's too late. Then we've got the good old Inquisition. So, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, or any other Inquisition for that matter. It's because it's not that great a card. Sorcery for 3. Look at target player's hand. Inquisition does 1 damage to that player for each white card in his or her hand. So you're basically just getting a couple of damage out of this card at best. And finding information about their hand, which has become more popular lately. Cards like Glasses of Urza, which was an artifact you could do that with, were not taken seriously very much back in the day, at least in my play groups. But Color Pied is weird. Black defenses with that Marsh Ass, yeah. Yeah, that's also a bit strange for the Color Pie. And this was meant as an anti-white card, but it's not a very strong one. It just deals them a couple damage if they've got a lot of white cards. Bog Imp got a reprint, and so I remember using these quite a bit. A turn 2 Bog Imp, 1/1 flying, could be problematic, especially if you slapped an Unholy Strength on it or something like that. You know, until the bigger creatures came out, this could be quite annoying. On guard for larger dangers, we underestimated the power and speed of the imp's muck-crusted claws. I like the art on this one as well. But, yeah, it was a card that we used to use sometimes. And now we're into the first 3 multicolor cards outside of Legends. Legends introduced the multicolors, and the Dark had just a handful here. 3 multicolor cards at common. And all green, black, red, some combination of those 3 colors, interestingly. There was no blue or white multicolors in the Dark. So just an enchantment for a green and a black. Put it down, and you can sacrifice a force to gain 3 life. Basically, whenever you feel like. Counts as both a black and a green card. Even the goblins shun this haunted place, where the tree limbs twist in agony, and the ground seems to scuttle under your feet. This was interesting because it was a precursor to Zurn Orb, which showed up in Ice Age, which let you sacrifice any type of land for 2 life instead of 3. But this was restricted to forests, but it did basically the same thing. It did cost a little more, and we were forced to those colors, but 2 isn't an oppressive cost for the effect either. Yo, Dark Heart of the World's classic card for sure. Yeah, I used to throw one in a deck every once in a while. I finished... okay, that... I finished cooking dinner, so now we eat. I'll be back in a few. Well, enjoy your dinner. So yeah, not much else to say about that one. For black and red, we got the Marsh Goblins. So another goblin. This is a 1/1 Swamp Walk instead of Mountain Walk, which most other goblins were associated with more often. Um, for your one red and a black. So basically, this one added, if you happen to have a splash of black, if anyone else had a splash of black around, well, guess what? You've gotten yourself an unblockable goblin, which could be quite handy. Even the other goblin races shun the marsh goblins, thanks to certain unwholesome customs they practice. And this was these multicolor cards in the dark. This one and the next one we'll get to. This was the first time that you had goblins show up in any color other than red. And, well, they were in red as well, cards. But, yeah, the tribes early on were very limited usually to their main color. And that's no exception. But if you were splashing some things, well, there you go. You got another, more variety in your goblin selection. All right, we'll get on to the green sheet here, but before we get into the green sheet proper, we'll finish off the multicolor cards. We got Scarwood Goblins, a green and a red for a 2/2. So like Goblin Hero, except this one counts as both a green and a red card. They had to spell that out just because people were confused early on with multicolors. Larger and more cunning than most goblins, Scarwood Goblins are thankfully found only in isolated pockets. So if you did want to splash green with your goblins, you couldn't play dwarves if you wanted to run goblin fire, but you could potentially throw in Curd Apes, which would be nice. You just wouldn't get your goblin-y bonuses. And this guy was 2/2 for 2, so it would be better for the curve too, along with your goblin heroes and flotillas. And I think a couple of decks did try to run a little bit of green because of that. They could throw in a giant growth for some combat tricks or something too, and try and make use of that. Red-green was a popular combination for a number of reasons. So that was, and this is one of my favorites. I used to run these for longer than most cards from the dark. Gaia's Touch. 2 green, enchantment. You may put 1 additional land in play during each of your turns, but that land must be a basic forest. So if you're running lots of non-basics, not so good. But if you're a mostly green deck or 2 colors with a decent amount of green, hey, you get an extra land drop each turn. That's very nice. And if you're getting to the point where you're not drawing that many cards, you don't need the extra land drop, you can sacrifice Gaia's Touch to add 2 green to your mana pool, so you can get your mana back, which is very nice too for curve. Even if you just drop this on turn 2 and then bring out a 3rd land that turn, you could either use it right away on turn 2 to play something for 3 then, or you could wait to the next turn, untap, you got 3 lands plus this, you could play something for 5, plus if you can drop another 1 land or 2, this thing can give you some pretty explosive starts. Yeah, I rather like this one. Next we got Scavenger Folk, 1/1 for 1, tap it and sacrifice Scavenger Folk to destroy target artifact. So again, lots of useful artifacts around. This is a nice 1-drop, something to do on the first turn, and potentially get rid of something troublesome later in the game. So yeah, I saw people throw these in decks from time to time. There are better 1-drops in green. Usually you're better with a Lawnmower Elf or a Birds of Paradise or something like that. But it's certainly not a horrible card. It found its uses. Land Leeches, a 2/2 first strike for 3. Yeah. This you could definitely find better things. But again, as a starting player, is a good basic sort of thing to start with. The standard cure for leeches requires the application of burning embers. Alternative methods must be devised should an ember of sufficient size prove more harmful than the leech. Sure would. And just going back, I forgot the flavor text over here. String, weapons, wax, or jewels. It makes no difference. Leave nothing unguarded in Scarwood. Next, we've got the Savin Elves. So 1/1 for 1, and it has, you can tap it and pay 2 green. Target enchant land is destroyed. So this could get rid of those pesky, goblin caves or goblin shrines. It could also get rid of something like an erosion or phantasmal terrain to let people land walk through your stuff. Psychic venom. There was a lot of enchant lands around in the early days. This could be useful at times if you run into that, but it's really more of a sideboard card because unless they happen to be using one of those strategies, it's not the most useful thing you can come up with. We'll save that one for last. We'll come over here. Carnivorous Plant. Now, this is a good reminder for people who are in the early days about walls. This is a fairly efficient wall, really. A 4/5 for 4 isn't that bad as a creature size, but walls can't attack, and you got to remember that. And it makes sense, but yeah, usually these disappeared once people found themselves an Urnhanded Djinn or something, similar. Even a war elephant was usually more useful to you, but this could certainly buy you some time to build up if you were just looking for a decent blocker. It had a mouth like that of a great beast, and gnashed its teeth as it strained to reach us. I am thankful it possessed no means of locomotion. Then we've got Venom. This also got into 4th edition, I believe. Enchantment for 3. All non-wall creatures target creature blocks or is blocked by are destroyed at the end of combat. So this is sort of the stoning effect that they had on Thicket Basilisk and Cockatrice, except you could put it on whichever creature you want. That was very popular to combine with lure effects that forced opposing creatures to block that creature if possible. So yeah, that was a nasty combat. You could get both on enchantments now, and that made things like Rabbit Wombat decks that like to put lots of enchantments on one creature a strategy. Maybe not the best strategy, but it was a strategy that was employed by a couple of people I know, and sometimes it had pretty good effects, as long as you could keep that one creature safe. I told him it was just a flesh wound, a wee scratch, but the next time I looked at him, poor Tag was dead and gone. And then we've got the Marsh Viper. Now, this wasn't the first creature with poison counters. That came in Legends, where they actually had 2 cards. You could get a Pit Scorpion, which was a 1/1 for 3, that if it damaged your opponent, gave them a poison counter. Or you could get the Serpent Generator, which made 1/1 serpent tokens that had the same effect, where you could give a poison counter. This one, though, a little bit stronger than a 1/1 for, it's a 1/2. You're paying 1 more, so it's 4 to cast, but if Marsh Viper damages opponent gets 2 poison counters. If the opponent ever has 10 or more poison counters, opponent loses the game. That's just what poison counters are. This one made it a lot more feasible if you could get something like a Dwarven Warrior to make your guy unblockable or something. You would get those 10 counters on much faster. Still wasn't a good strategy. I never saw anyone who got it to work consistently, but it became a lot more feasible if you could get 2 poison counters on at a time instead of just 1. Trying to think the other differences. With these early creatures, they had to damage the opponent to get the poison counters on, so you were doing both damage and poison. Which was a bit of a drawback, because half the time, you're getting up 9 points of damage. If you've got other cards in your deck that also deal damage and not poison, well, then your opponent might just die from the damage before the poison counters do anything anyway.
Sorry, Ezra's back in.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up the green commons. So now we're on to blue.
Just get my drink.
So we got Waterworm. Waterworm gains +1 defense if opponent controls at least one island. So you're getting a 1/1 for 1, but if your opponent's got islands, watch out, it's a 1/2 for 1. A little bit better than what you'd usually get for your 1 mana. Nothing too special, but interesting. Giant Shark. Now this would be most closely comparable to the Sea Serpent from Alpha Beta. That was a 5/5 for the same casting cost of 6. This shark is a 4/4, so a little smaller to start. If Giant Shark blocks or is blocked by a creature that has taken damage this turn, Giant Shark gains +2 attack and trample until end of turn. Giant Shark cannot attack opponent unless opponent controls at least one island. Giant Shark is buried immediately if at any point its controller has no islands. So it's got the same island lock effect that the Sea Serpent had. But if you had Prodigal Sorcerers or something where you could do a damage to things, this extra 2 attacks, so it became a 6/4 instead of a 5/5 with trample. It wasn't generally worth the effort. I knew a few people who tried to make use of Sea Serpents on occasion. I don't remember the Giant Shark being used anywhere near as much. But it's something big that could stall for you if you in a draft until you could figure if your opponent had islands or something like that. So that was the Giant Shark. Deep Water. I love the art on Deep Water. This one I really appreciate. Some of these underwater scenes where you can make out some of the surface.
The one before that, my comment, not this one.
I finished cooking dinner, so we'll be back in a few. No? Oh, that shark reminds me of the movie Jaws.
The other one.
The previous one? Yeah, it's more of a great white.
Beat up, like...
More of a great white that's seen a few battles, whereas this is a hammerhead shark. Enchantment for 2 blue. All mana, you can pay 1. All mana producing lands you control provide blue instead of their normal mana until end of turn. So, I mean, if you need a lot of blue mana for certain spells or effects, that can be handy, but it doesn't come up often enough. I don't remember this ever seeing play in decks. I just remember really liking the art on it.
There's a lot of really neat art.
This one, the detail on the art is really good. It is a bit gruesome. Riptide, all blue creatures become tapped.
But at least they're just skeletons and they're not like gory ones.
True. But yeah, just the artist really... I always have trouble pronouncing his last name, but Randy did a great job on that water. And the skeletons are, just really...
Would that be Asplund or something like that?
Yeah, probably Asplund Faith. Anyway, I all blue creatures become tapped. 1 mana. It's a nice cheap trick. If they happen to be playing blue again, or if you're playing the hacking sliding decks from hell that were around at the time, which could change card references of colors to a different color. That did happen from time to time. That was another whole strategy which was employed. Occasionally was super annoying, but wasn't really consistent in my experience most of the time. Especially once people figured out what you're doing, they could find a way to deal with it.
Yeah.
Erosion is a very slow land destruction, basically. You stick it on a land for 3 blue. Target land is destroyed unless its controller pays 1. Or pays 1 life during his upkeep. Effects that prevent or redirect cannot be used to counter this loss of life. No, it's not even land destruction. I was thinking more of Orcish Minds as slow land destruction. This is just irritation. Because basically you got to use the land to pay for the land. It just sort of gums up your land. And then if you really need that extra mana, well, you can pay 1 life instead. And then you can use your land. So it really doesn't accomplish much. I think I tried it once in a deck with Psychic Venoms and Phantasmal Terrains and Boomerangs and just stuff that could mess with opponent's land. It never really amounted to much of anything. Ghost Ship has a special place in my heart.
Oh, that kid.
One of the first packs of Dark, when I first started playing, you could get packs of Dark still for about $6, $8 a pack, something like that. I didn't get many. I got one or two because they were so much more expensive than other sets. I'd rather get sets with, more and generally more powerful cards as potential. But I think the first pack of Dark I ever got had a pair of ghost ships in it back to back. Two of these. And I used those ghost ships in my cards because at the time, a 2/4 flying creature for 4 wasn't a bad cost. I mean, you look at a giant spider, which a lot of people ran because it was 2/4 and it could block flyers. Well, this was 2/4 and was a flying creature, so it could get over. And it also had the extra ability to regenerate. It was expensive to pay 3 blue to regenerate, but it was nice to have as an option. That phantom prow split the storm as lightning cast its long shadow on the battlefield below.
Welcome back, Becca.
So that's another
I added a little too much chipotle chili
Mill World quote, I think.
to the chili.
Oh, okay.
So we got the kick in the back.
We got spicy chili. All right. But yeah, I like the ghost ship. I used to run ghost ships, and it's another card that I think got reprinted later in 4th edition or something. But it's not a bad card. It really isn't. And at least in the day, I'm sure there are much better things out there now, but it was a fun thematic card, and I like ships. And this is certainly one of those. If I ever build that ship deck that I talked about when I had those merchant ships and stuff like that, and pirate ships, and it's just a fun card and a fun theme.
Boyd's gonna give me trouble when he rewatches this and realizes I didn't give him enough notice.
Oh, that's a shame.
Just wait.
Hopefully, we do plan on getting these going back in the evenings again, but it unfortunately just didn't work out
Hello,
today.
someone. He says MTG streamer finally. Yes, we are mostly kind of like Pokemon, but we do
other card games.
We
as
do
well.
other card games while we're trying to incorporate more,
and sometimes other things with the kids.
Barry's our Papa Spocat here. He is more into the Magic. I am more into the Pokemon. So we're trying to incorporate as a family. So
Sunken Cities did see play. It was nice to get all blue creatures gain +1/+1. Black had its Bad Moon, and white had its Crusade to get similar effects. But blue, this would allow you to get that, which was helpful for your Merfolk deck, or for just, making your air elementals bigger threats. But it had that upkeep. You have to pay 2 during each upkeep to keep it around, or it's destroyed. It is a very real downside. But I know some people who played these quite regularly in the early days. So, again, it's a card worth considering, which, is better than a lot at the time, I think. And to our last blue common, we have Drowned. So this is one of those rare instances of zombies, one tribe, getting into a different color. And it's a straight up blue card. You could just play it as a 1/1 zombie for 2. But if you happen to have black mana around, you can pay a black to regenerate it. Much more efficient than the regeneration on the ghost ship. And, a bit redundant if you did have something like the old Zombie Master, which gave Swamp Walk and regeneration for 1 black, so it has that ability. But it's nice that it has it on its own if someone cleared out your Zombie Master. We asked Captain Saul what became of the Seraphina, but all he said was, ships that go down shouldn't come back up. So, there's a little... I guess it has a bit of a reminiscent art to the Pirates of the Caribbean or something. Yeah, it was a decent little card. I can't complain about this one.
So were the cursed pirates in Pirates of the Caribbean, were they kind of like zombie pirates?
Well, sort of.
Kind of, but not
undead,
really.
But it was different. I don't think they were technically zombies, but
we're doing our video right now.
They still had their minds and mental faculties to them.
Yeah.
Alright, now we're into some of the extra cards that I just had at the back. So there are things like the Venom and the Marsh Viper. I'll skip those. But we got Elves of Deep Shadow. This got reprinted much later on. I don't think until Ravnica. But this was good. I mean, Llanowar Elves, you got your 1/1 for 1 elf that could tap for a green. Excellent card. This was a 1/1 for 1 elf that could tap for a black. So in a multicolor deck, it helped you with your fixing. And it had the downside, because it was doing that, of
Julie's not
giving
ready
you a
yet,
different
Thomas.
color, of doing 1 damage to you when you use this ability. I know people who use these for sure. It was a decent card. Usually you'd want Birds of Paradise instead, but in an elf deck, if you eventually got that far, they didn't have a lord until much later. But or just as an extra elf, if you were in those colors, it's a play for sure. There are aberrations who have turned on everything we hold, turned on everything we hold sacred. Let them be cast out. Next, we've got a tracker, 2/2 for 3, 2 green, and tap. Tracker does an amount of damage equal to its power to target creature. Target creature does an amount of damage equal to its power to tracker. I think later they keyworded this ability and made it target creature fights target creature. That came again much later, if I'm even remembering that right. But yeah, tracker was an interesting ability at that time. Certainly, it would usually kill itself doing that unless you were very selective and nobody had any tricks. But it was an interesting card that would at least make you think how you used it or whether it was worth considering over your other three cost creatures. And again, it could be pumped or other things. That one we did. Good old whippoorwill. This confused some poor people who.
I like the art in that one.
It is, but it's a bird flying around, and the creature doesn't have flying, so it can't actually fly in the game. Which, yeah, that tricked a few people over the years. They probably changed it from summon whippoorwill to summon bird now or something like that. But
I don't know if people are chatting or not, or the chat.
I don't see much anyway.
Yeah.
1 green for a 1/1. Until end of turn, target creature may not regenerate, and damage done to target creature may not be prevented or redirected. If the creature goes to the graveyard, remove it from the game. So, it was a way to get around some of the tricks people would use to keep their creatures alive, basically. For the cost of a creature, which could get offed anyway, and then paying 2 and tapping it, yeah, it didn't see a whole lot of play, but it wasn't useless again as a 1/1 for 1. You could get it in there, and it might be a surprise at times. If the whippoorwill remains silent, the soul has not reached its reward. Spitting Slug is another creature that I did use for a while. A 2/4 creature for 3 mana was above the curve at the time. Spitting Slug, paying 2, Spitting Slug gains first strike until end of turn. If this ability is not activated, all creatures blocking or blocked by Spitting Slug gain first strike until end of turn. So, it sort of got automatically not first strike unless you pay 2. Having the ability to get it is certainly useful. Having first strike can certainly help. But being a 2/4 creature, sometimes it really didn't matter if the other creatures had first strike, because this could tank the hit and then do its 2 damage back and kill it. Obviously that can get troublesome if your opponent happens to be sitting on a lightning bolt or something. They get their first strike damage in and then finish it off before it can finish the job. But generally speaking, I found this to be a useful enough creature for a 3-drop back at that time. Getting a 2/4 for 3 was good. And the ability, yeah, you could work around it, and it wasn't all bad. Next we got Nail Sylvain. 3 green, very heavy green creature for a 2/2, and 4 green and tap it. Target creature is regenerated. That's a useful ability, being able to tap it to just regenerate, whatever creature you want, for sure. But that is a lot of mana, and a lot of green mana specifically, to be able to get this guy. I did try using it from time to time, but it's just so expensive. Usually you could find better options. This is his domain, and while you remain here, you must value all life as you value your own. He's a freaky little green guy. But I like Christopher Rush. He's a good art. A lot of these early artists are really good. Scarwood Hag, a 1/1 for 2. Again, 4 green and tap it. Target creature gains Forest Walk until end of turn, which, is nice if your opponent happens to have forests, and if it doesn't, you don't have to worry about it. Or just tap it, target creature loses Forest Walk until end of turn. Since you're playing green, you don't want to be Forest Walked, so that's a way to stop that anyway. There weren't a whole lot of those around, unless you played Hammerheim, which could get rid of land walk abilities. Trying to think if there was another one. Anyway, but it did something unique. It wasn't great as a 1/1 for 2, but why is Demonic Tutor so expensive? Well, that's a good question. It is an uncommon, and it's an uncommon from only the early sets, basically. They reprinted one in Angels versus Demons dual decks or something, but it hasn't had a whole lot of reprints that I'm aware of. It's just such a strong card. Everybody wants to run the one copy they're allowed. Oh, yeah, I got a couple cards on the back here. The only one I haven't covered so far is we got Tivar's Crusade. All goblins are destroyed. So here's the help counter that Goblin tribal deck. Goblins were one of the first tribal decks that really had enough to potentially actually build with. Like I said, once Fallen Empress came out, you got a little bit more. You could do Thalids. River Merfolk helped the Lord of Atlantis Merfolk decks. But Tivar's Crusade, yeah, it was just so narrow. You didn't run across Goblin decks that often.
Okay,
People's stupidity is something bigger than the universe.
I'm not sure what that one's related to. But
there can be some of that going around for sure. This page here, this is all just extra commons, I think. On the front, these I've all talked about previously. Just ones I happen to have extras around. No. Here's some more cards. Ashes to Ashes. So that's very much like the Dust to Dust. Ashes to Ashes removes 2 target non-artifact creatures from the game and does 5 damage to you. So that 5 damage to you is a big pain. 2 creatures at once is nice, and unlike Terror, which was the removal of choice at the time for black that this set was around, unless you had a big drain life to try to just kill something that way, this could get rid of black creatures. Artifact creatures still caused it trouble, but black creatures you could do with this. So this card did see some play. I remember people using this as a potential 2-for-1, but also just because not having to worry about running into a black mirror and having useless removal was a real problem. Do you have any decks? I have many decks. They're mostly sitting in boxes, and maybe I'll get to them on another video, but not today. I used to love building decks even more than playing at times. I used to really puzzle that out, but yeah, I'll get to some decks eventually, but right now I'm focused on getting through some of these old sets and my thoughts on those.
yes,
There's the Bog Imp we already did. Soros Path, widely considered one of the worst lands in the game. It's an interesting effect, being able to exchange 2 blocking creatures and have them block the other things. It's just the downside on this is so steep. First of all, being a land that doesn't produce mana. And secondly, anytime this land becomes tapped, it deals 2 damage to all your creatures. That's rough. That'll kill a lot of your stuff. That really negates the point of being able to switch blockers in some cases. I mean, the art is nice. I do appreciate the art on this card, but it is not a good card. It is an interesting card, but it is not a good card. Coal Golem. I think this was another card that I got in my first booster pack. Being able to get a 3/3 for 5 generic. Didn't matter what color you were playing. It was nice. Pay 3 and sacrifice it to add 3 red, so it could filter whatever color you were playing to get you more red, which is at least interesting, but generally not worth using. You could find a better creature for that much mana, whatever color you were playing. But it was interesting and flavorful, and that's what I liked about it. It is something you might pick in a draft. just being a base body that is easy to play, not worried about colors. 3 such creatures stood burning at the crest of the hill. Only seconds later, the fireball struck our front lines. So if you had no mountains in play, you could use this to cast the fireball. That's true. The Dark was a super cool set. My favorite art from that set is Rune Sword. That is a nice one.
Ezra? No, I said it.
Again, I don't have a complete set here. I'm going off my memories based on a common set plus a few extras I had. And but yeah, just the theme of the set, I find it matched so well with Fallen Empires. I think the two would draft amazingly together. Unfortunately, I never got the opportunity to draft Dark plus Fallen Empires together, but I'd love to try it one day. Also, I find the two of them just have more in common, being 8-card sets with Homelands. If you wanted to think of it sort of as a mini block, the original 3 sets, Arabian Nights, Antiquities, and Legends, were full of innovation and some very strong cards. These 3 sets all had much lowered power levels. They started to introduce more of the sort of tribal themes and things, and the downturn in society after the Brothers' War. You know, it was very... I think they fit together very, very well, especially Fallen Empires in the Dark, but even Homelands, I find, fits in there nicely, too. So here we got the Scarecrow, a 2/2 for 5, even worse as a body than the Coal Golem. But its ability, although it costs 6, until end of turn, all damage done to you by flying creatures is reduced to 0. Flying creatures were popular for people who could get them. Sarah Angels, Singir Vampires, Shivan Dragons, Mahamati Djinns, or the smaller ones like Air Elemental and Dragon Whelp or whatever. People loved flying creatures. This could be an annoying ability. It was just too expensive. On a too fragile body, it could be destroyed by things that kill creatures. It could be destroyed by things that killed artifacts. It just wasn't very good. But it was interesting. There was more malice in its button eyes than should have been possible in something that had never known life. And this here was the, again, rare one, or uncommon one, rather, from the uncommon sheet in my very first pack of the Dark. This one stands out to me a lot because of that. Psychic Allergy. It's a color hoser from back in the day when those were so prominent that you get to pick the color. Choose a color when casting Psychic Allergy. During opponent's upkeep, Psychic Allergy does 1 damage to the opponent for each card of this color that he or she controls. Sacrifice 2 islands during your upkeep, or Psychic Allergy is destroyed. Yeah, sacrificing 2 islands each turn stinks. It really does. But it's a neat effect, just being able to choose that color hoser. Later, I might have tried to squeeze it in a deck that was skipping turns. I got one of my the first deck I ever won a tournament with was a Chronostasis with Chronotog and Stasis and Kismet, and it would lock up the board, everything tapped, and then just skip my next turn until my opponent ran out of cards. It was a nasty piece of work, and something like that, something like this might work too, as an alternate win condition, but that's a very, very niche use for Psychic Allergy. Dance of Many, on the other hand, people loved Clone, and Dance of Many basically gave you a chance. It was reprinted in Chronicles, so they were not that hard to find, and it was able to make a copy of target creature, but you're making a token that was reliant on the enchantments staying around, so it was a bit more fragile. And it had an upkeep of 2 blue. It was a common theme in blue with Sunken City as well. But being able to copy a creature for only 2 instead of the 4 that clone cost, some people found that quite worthwhile. And often you copied their Shivan with this, or their Singir Vampire. Well, it wasn't that hard. That often those 2 creatures would trade, and then you just paid your 2 and got rid of their biggest creature, basically. So that was potentially useful as well. So I know lots of people who ran Dance of Minis for quite some time, especially if they had trouble getting hold of clones and things like that. This was, you know, if it's what you had, it's what you used. It is neat looking too, making a copy of whatever. I don't even know what that creature was supposed to be. Some sort of aquatic animal, I think. And next we got Merfolk Assassin. This one, again, for early Merfolk decks, you get a 1/2 for 2, and you can tap to destroy target creature that has Island Walk. That sounds pretty niche, and it is on its own, but it comboed incredibly well with another card, which is just on the next page here, which we'll get to in a minute. This little guy could do some work if you had the right setup to go with him. And the art's not bad either. Early Merfolk decks, yeah, it was another option. There weren't a lot of Merfolk back then, so yeah, they certainly, if you were trying to make a Merfolk deck back at this time, this was definitely a tool you would be considering. And let's go right to that other card since we're talking about it, and you'll see why. In the same set, they had War Barge. I saw this card before I ever got one, and I knew people who used to run this just with a boomerang. Artifact, 4 to play, pay 3, target creature gains Island Walk until end of turn, so you could use it with the assassin. Oh, your creature has Island Walk. Oh, look, it's dead. That was nice on its own. If War Barge leaves play this turn, target creature is buried. So all the creatures you loaded onto the barge to give them Island Walk, if the barge disappeared, uh-oh, they all die. They are all stuck out at sea and drowned, basically. So you could do that with a Disenchant or with a Boomerang. And that was one of the first combos that one of my cousins, actually, or my cousin's fiance, introduced me to, where we had our decks going, and he'd bring out this thing, and it looked interesting, and then he would pull that off, where all of a sudden all my creatures would be stuck in the drink and flailing. So yeah, that left quite an impression on me, and I was quite glad I eventually pulled one of these out of a pack of the dark myself, so that I've got one. And I appreciate those early little combos with this and the cards like Boomerang or Merfolk Assassin. It's a fun.
Which card is Becca talking about? This one?
Card. That card looks cool. I think that was 2 ago. That was the Dance of Many over here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was talking to my mom.
Next, we've got Standing Stones. Pay 1 and tap it. Pay 1 life and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. This ability is played as an interrupt. Effects may not be used to counter this loss of life. So yeah, you gotta pay 1 life to get a mana of any color and pay 1 mana. So it changes your mana from one color to another. This is not a very good mana rock at all. It doesn't generate mana for you, and it can filter it to whatever color you need, but the cost is just too high. Fellwar Stone was a much better card from the same set that only cost 2, and you could just tap it to get a mana, and that mana could be of any color that a land your opponent controlled could produce. That saw a lot more play from a lot of people. It was even better when they eventually in Mirage came out with the diamonds, which was 1 for each color, so you could pick the color you wanted when you were building your deck for it. Fellwar Stone could potentially, especially if you're playing a bunch of colors, you could usually find something useful from the opponent. It cost the same as the diamonds, but it came into play untapped, whereas they came into play tapped. Yeah, Fellwar Stone was amazing. Standing Stones here sure isn't. I don't know anyone who seriously, like, they would look at this, consider it, and then just never include it in a deck. Tower of Coriol. Artifact for 2, tap it, target creature cannot be blocked by walls until end of turn. So it's basically a siege tower that lets you get over a wall. Walls were certainly around in the early days. I remember them quite a bit. Occasionally people would run a wall of stone or a wall of shadows or whatever. A wall of swords sometimes would turn up.
This help with the lighting?
Yeah, it did until it twisted the camera.
Sorry.
Anyway, It's still twisting the camera. But yeah, walls were never common enough and a big enough problem to run a card just designed to get you around walls. Put it that way.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, for now. Necropolis, a 0/1 wall, artifact creature wall, for 5, and take a creature from your graveyard and remove it from the game to put X 0/1 counters on it.
That is neat art.
Where X is the casting cost to remove. So if you have a bunch of expensive casting costs, you could get this up to a lot of toughness. It is neat art. Reminiscent.
Bring it a little bit closer. I think the owl is really cool.
Yeah.
Hello, Mama KJ. How's it going?
That's by Nini Thomas. But yeah, this wasn't a good card either.
Thank you very much. Today we're just showing off Barry's the Dark's Magic the Gathering set.
Again, being an artifact and a creature, it could be removed in various numbers of ways. It had a lot of setup to actually make it a decent toughness creature. For 5, there were creatures like a Wall of Stone was 0/8 for 3. It wasn't worth the setup to get this thing.
I really love that owl
going. It is a neat card. This one here, I used to. I think I showed in one of our shorts there, the Ring of the Immortals. I found this a good counterpart to that, if you had lots of mana for funky artifacts. Reflecting Mirror. 4 to cost, pay X and tap it, target spell, which targets you, targets the player of your choice instead. X is twice the casting cost of target spell. This ability is played as an interrupt, so you needed to keep lots of mana. I mean, this could be good for warding off things like lightning bolts fairly easily, but if your opponent played with spells like Fireball that cost X, this could get way out of hand of where you'd be able to actually use this. But it's a neat idea, just being able to protect you by reflecting spells away.
It is magic.
Yes. But like I said, the Ring of the Immortals, I think, protected your creatures or something. I forget the details, but I remember I used to like pairing the two together. Next, we're on to Grave Robbers. 3 for a 1/1.
Eater of the Dead OMG brings me back.
Oh, it sure does. That was, I don't know a few people who use that. You could do some neat tricks with that one, but for now, Grave Robbers.
Becca.
Pay a black and tap it, take 1 artifact from any graveyard and remove it from the game and gain 2 life. So if they had artifacts that they liked to bring back, this could get rid of it so you didn't have to worry about that. If you don't have health, you don't have anything. The old proverb there, yeah?
Probably should have emailed you or DM'd you earlier, Boyd.
Something like a Chaos Orb that people like to keep bringing back and destroying more stuff, for example. This could finally shuffle it out of the way. Of course, they'd probably target this first with the Chaos Orb if you had one, but that's another whole thing. But there's usually you could find artifact targets for it, and it did gain you life, which is nice in black. Weren't a lot of black cards that gained you life, although there's more than in some colors actually, because you did have things like Drain Life, and you had things like El Hajja from Arabian Nights, and there's a few things.
Some of these cards are right up there with my love of Eternatus and Darkrai.
The Fallen. This was another one that was in Chronicles. My first copy was from Chronicles. A 2/3 for 4, including 3 black.
That's kind of creepy.
It is creepy, but it's not very good. It's just too small. During its controller's upkeep, the Fallen does 1 damage to each opponent it had previously damaged. So that does nothing until you actually get this thing to attack somebody and deal them damage. If you get to deal them damage, though, as long as this thing stays in play, each turn it'll just deal them an extra damage, which is really neat. It's just too much setup for a creature this size for that cost, unfortunately. I never got it to work on a consistent basis by any means. On to the Eater of the Dead. Well, let's do the flavor text there before we move. Magic often masters those who cannot master it. So
Void was saying that
tale.
this is his favorite set.
Honestly, I love the flavor in this set, almost as much as I love the Fallen Empire's flavor.
Hello, John
Part of that is I
Parker.
don't
How are
have as much
you?
of this set,
It
but
is. You're right.
the two go together very well. They're very similar in some respects, and yes, I love the dark. This one's 3/4, so you're starting to get a decent sized body, but it does cost 5. Take one creature from any graveyard and remove it from the game. Untap Eater of the Dead. That's nice for a couple of reasons. Because right from Alpha, Animate Dead was always a thing, and people who had creatures in their graveyard, if they were playing black especially, loved to bring them back. Even white had Resurrection, which could bring creatures back from the graveyard. Or green could regrowth creatures from the graveyard and then play them again. This got them out of the way, so you'd never have to worry them again. That was definite value. And being able to untap it. Once Alliances came out, there was a red enchantment for 1 that would let you tap a creature to give a creature +2 attack, +1 defense. If there was enough creatures kicking around in the graveyard, you could slap one of those on this thing, tap it to buff a creature, untap it. Tap it to buff a creature again, untap it. You could buff a whole pile of times. Anything that gave a tap ability like that, you could really stack up those effects with this guy. He was pretty neat. Even the putrid muscles of the dead can provide strength to those loathsome enough to consume them. Apparently I missed something.
Yep. Don't worry about it.
Okay, fair enough. Next, we got Cursed Artifact. Black has always had a hard time dealing with artifacts. In Antiquities, they got Gate to Phyrexia. I think that's still the best card they have for getting rid of artifacts, because it's enchantment for 2 that you can sacrifice a creature to destroy an artifact. Other than that, the only thing they get are things like Cursed Artifact, and there's another one that does something similar that just makes an artifact deal them a damage each turn. Or an Argothian Pixie, which can tap an artifact and keep it locked up a bit. Oh, sorry, not Argothian Pixie. What's the name of that one? Again, it's from Antiquities again. But this Cursed Artifact, during his or her upkeep, controller of target artifact may choose to bury the artifact. If the controller chooses not to bury that artifact, Cursed Artifact does 2 damage to him or her. So this will usually get rid of the artifact eventually, if it's a very long game. But if they need it right away, they can keep it around. It'll just deal them 2 damage each turn. It is a nasty card.
Likes. Thank you, everybody.
And you do see, I do know people who tried it, because black was just that short of options for dealing with artifacts. But usually it's just too slow. They'll only let it die if it's not that big a deal to them. So Voska feared the artifact had come too easily.
Monkey.
And unfortunately, I do think I have some more dark cards, but
we'll have to do a part 2 of this.
If I come across them, yeah. But those were ones that I had handy, and I just like talking about these old sets. We might as well talk about those. Those are completely different anyway. I'll just put this one back on camera again, because it's one of the highlight cards, and I like the fact that it was a common one, so common sheet, but harder to find. And my whole discussion there is how that related to the Mountain and Arabian Nights in the desert side. But this card is strong and was certainly worth using. So
we should probably
could
talk a bit about our 1K stream once we get to 1K subs too.
Oh, perhaps.
While Barry's pulling that out. Once we get to 1K subs, we're going to have a celebration stream at some point afterwards. And we're going to try and do a 24-hour stream. And it's going to be a bit of everything. We're going to have... there's going to be Pokemon. There's going to be probably Star Trek. There'll be Magic the Gathering as well. And we have some Lord of the Rings Magic the Gathering cards that we are going to be doing something with at some point. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
We'll try and have a kind of basic schedule of when we're going to be doing what, because we're going to have to take shifts. So let us know if you're interested. If you are, hit that sub button and the bell notification button so you know when we're going to be doing that.
These this page is completely separate from the dark. Comes
Thanks, Void.
much later. These cards were printed in 2000. Yeah, the year 2000. So 6 years after the dark. But I just kept one of each. They were all uncommons from Invasion and then Apocalypse. And it was cards. Invasion had neighboring colored cards where you'd get 2 cards on one, and you could pick which one you wanted to play, which side. So here you had a black card for 1, target player discards a card from his hand, or a red card for 4 that destroys target land. Neither are a good card on their own, but the fact that you got the choice of 2 different cards on one card, I thought this was... Okay, I'll show you after we go through these quickly why this stood out to me so much. Assault and Battery, this was probably one of the better ones. For 1 red, you got to do 2 damage to target creature or player as a sorcery, or you could get a 3/3 elephant token for your 4. If you needed a body, that was good. Wax and Wane, destroy target enchantment. For 1 white or for 1 green, target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Both instants. This one saw some play as well.
Void says Pain and Suffering. Love it. I didn't play past 1998.
Yeah. Day and Night. They're all like Assault and Battery, Wax and Wane, Pain and Suffering. They all have that sort of thing to them. Target creature gets -1/-1 till end of turn, or target creature creatures target player controls get +1/+1 until end of turn. So, sort of a morale effect there, or the opposite, but just to 1 target creature. Standing Deliver, I think this one got used as well. Prevent the next 2 damage that would be dealt to target creature this turn, or return target permanent to its owner's hand. Another bounce effect for blue could be quite useful. Oh, sorry. I got out of order here. This one was from Apocalypse, which was the following set to Invasion. And these ones had neighboring colors from Invasion. These ones had opposite colors that are usually sort of enemy colors they're thought of for Apocalypse. Spite and Malice, I did use this one a bit. Counter target spell for 4, or destroy target non-black creature. It can't be regenerated for 4. A little expensive, but pretty diverse. Kill a creature or counter a spell. Illusion and Reality. Target spell or permanent becomes the color of your choice until end of turn, or destroy target artifact. This one here became infamous for a while. Fire and Ice. Fire does 2 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures or players. So you can split the damage, whatever. 2 damage, split it up. Kill their Bird of Paradise and do 1 to their face or whatever. And the other one, tap target permanent and draw a card. Both decent effects, nice options for choices, and the fact that these were both 2-cost instants made this an amazing target for a while until they changed the rules, I think, to put on an Isochron Scepter. So every turn you could pay 2 and choose one of these 2 effects. You could just draw more cards if you needed, you could clear off threats if you needed, or just try and whittle them down with damage. This card was amazing, and got even more so once you could put it on a stick and do it every turn. Life and Death. This one also saw play. I remember I used to use this. Life. Until end of turn, all lands you control are 1/1 creatures that are still land. So this could be quite useful if all of a sudden they weren't expecting you to have a bunch of lands creeping and attacking them, especially if you had something that buffed all your creatures. And Death. Return target creature card from your graveyard to play. You lose life equal to its converted mana cost. So again, this is a reanimate effect like Animate Dead, except it's not an enchantment to keep it alive. It's just play this and it brings it back, but you have to pay some life. Again, a lot of these were useful and did see play. And then on the back, I've got the 10th. One of each color combination, Order and Chaos. Order, remove target attacking creature from the game. Chaos, creatures can't block this turn. Probably one of the weaker ones, to be honest. But again, being able to remove a creature even for 4
So-
can be useful.
Were these cards playable?
Yeah, these were all in regular sets. This was a regular mechanic. I think they've done it since with, but this was the first run of the split cards they ever did, and I thought they were really neat at the time, just having that option. And one of the reasons I thought it was neat at the time was one of the very first. Oh, I'm gonna have to read this whole section of the binder here. One of the first proxy cards I ever had. Wow, look at that print quality. This was an old printer that one of my friends had, and we printed out color images from a Scry magazine or something that he scanned into. Yeah, and then we just glued them onto a basic land or something so that it had a back, and it's way too thick. This is the quality that you would expect from early attempts to, make your own proxies or whatever from cards. They're so obviously fake.
It's fine. Go.
It's just brutal. They feel wrong. They look wrong.
Says I'm hanging out with Elizabeth, and she just saw the Mimic You promo you guys put in my winnings, and wanted to thank you for adding the Mimic You collection. You're welcome, Elizabeth.
But yeah, I had this along with a couple of others in my collection, and then I saw those, and it just reminded me of.
Have you done this set yet? To go through your set to show that off?
What set?
The one that Jazam's in.
Arabian Nights. No, I don't have an Arabian Nights set. I've just got. I don't even think I have half the set. Okay. It would be fun to discuss one day, but
yeah,
I just don't have that much of it. Let me know if people are interested. I'll gladly talk through what I've got. But yeah, it was well before my time, so I've got a few things I managed to collect over the years or trade for over the years here and there. But yeah, I don't even have all the commons. I've just got a few things that I picked up that were useful that I got opportunities. For which card?
The Jazam card?
I don't think I traded for that one. I think I found that one fairly cheap at a store one day or something. Yeah.
I thought you traded for it.
I don't think I traded for that one.
So one of your many lucky finds.
I hate these sleeves. These pages do not. These are poor quality pages. They don't even have a name. Like, I've had those forever. Anyway, I don't like that type of page. But we've basically gone through everything I wanted to discuss, and then a little bit more. Oh, look at that. We got. This is where I used to have some of my extra Legends cards kicking around from when we opened those Italian Legends booster packs.
Yeah, if
it's still a handsome. We kept one wrapper here.
If anyone's interested in seeing us go through the Italian Legends, that was quite fun.
Yeah, I've got a comment. I think I still have it because it never sold. We put it up on eBay once. A set of 4 of every common from Legends in Italian, plus one of each of the uncommon legendary lands from Legends. And yeah, people said we asked way too much for it, so it never sold. And now I think there's like one card in that batch that would be worth more than what we were asking.
Yeah.
So you never know.
If anyone's interested in buying Italian Legends, that's the thing, is finding buyers.
Well, that's the thing. So it's such a niche thing because a lot of people don't like foreign cards, but it's the only way. It was the only way to get some of these things. Legends, one of the more famous cards from Legends was Mana Drain, which is a counterspell, which is just silly because it counters the spell and then gives you mana equal to the cost of the spell.
Ezra?
That used to be a bit of a downside because you could get mana burned from it and die if you didn't have a plan to use the mana. But more often than not, you could find a use for it, especially if you're planning for that. And it wasn't much of a problem. I remember back in the day they said they would never, ever reprint that card again unless the entire development team was hit by a bus. And one of my friends used to joke about finding the town they worked in and renting a bus.
That's not funny.
No, it's not funny, but it shows how adamant they were about not reprinting that card because it was so silly. And now they've reprinted it a few times.
Do you want to change the reorientation of this.
They've changed their team, I guess. I'm hanging out with Elizabeth.
Oh, I read that already.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, thanks for those who came. Sorry we didn't get out notice for this earlier. Like I said, we'll usually do these in the evenings like we did the first two.
Yeah, when everybody's sleeping.
It's just, unfortunately, I have to work tomorrow.
And we want to kind of pay attention to the Oilers Panthers game.
Yeah, the Stanley Cup Finals, Game 7 tonight is, something special since we live near Edmonton.
I saw a picture of a whole bunch of Oilers fans getting on a flight to Florida for the game.
Yeah.
The plane
So
was
while it
orange.
would have been very thematic to do the dark at midnight, unfortunately it just wasn't going to work out this time around.
Maybe we
But
can,
yeah, I could do Alliances next, or I could do the Portal 3 Kingdoms next, or I could go back and look at what I do have from older sets like Arabian Nights, Legends,
take her for a minute.
or
She's got a very dirty face. But why don't we
Antiquities.
just...
Or I
Sorry?
could just combine those and just do the little scraps I have from each.
There we go. There's Papa
Because
Spocat.
like I said, I don't have a lot, but they are fun sets too, and they were very influential in how the game developed later
Finley
on.
says hi. She has a dirty face from eating Nutella.
Sorry.
Yes, you do. You have a dirty
no.
face. Oh, yes.
Oh yes. Where's the Kleenex?
So yeah. What else do we have to say?
Not much. I'm just wrapping up
Yeah.
basically.
So.
Just wanted to say thanks for coming and sharing some of my
Oh,
thoughts.
wait. Should we see if there's somebody that we can raid? Is there anybody worth raiding? If anybody cares to raid? I know it's kind of magic, but it would go to something.
It would.
Let's see. If you can hang out, then let's see if there's anybody we can raid. So
But
just
yeah,
give me a minute.
like I said, just to
Hey,
mention
Broly, we're just finishing up.
some
How
of
you
the
doing?
more
There is.
popular cards out of
But
the
we
dark,
rated him last
aside from
time.
the Maze of Ith, were things like Ball Lightning, Goblin Wizard, or Orcish General wasn't that popular, but Preacher for a while was one.
Let's see.
Frankenstein's Monster, a nice reference to a popular fictional story, was in there too. They all had neat effects.
You too, Void.
But there aren't that many that are really strong. Ball Lightning did see some play in a lot of aggressive
Only
red
one
decks
I'm
for a
really
while.
seeing on right now is actually
And Felwar Stone saw a lot of play just as a nice mana rock that was more efficient than most for a long time. Once they got rid of all the moxes and things that were just absolutely broken. Which were all gone by the time I was starting to play anyway, so I never knew that era.
I'll see if I can
myself.
find his link. I am subbed, so Spencer McKay. Here we are.
Alrighty.
All right, so if you guys want to head over there, even if you just stay for the raid, say Spocat raid, just to give some love over to Spencer McKay. Then you feel free to leave, but please just stay for the raid. Really quickly, say hi, Spocat raid, and there we go. And then feel free to go. Yeah, please do. Really, it was fun. We had a lot of neat cards there. So here's the link. Please click that if you can and go over there. Say Spocat raid, and we appreciate you. We will leave this going for a bit, and then we'll end it as soon as we get some people going over there. So thank you guys so much for hanging out, and we appreciate you so much, and hope to catch you in future videos, and when we try and do our 24-hour stream, which will be interesting.
It should be. Another thing I want to do one of these days, aside from the Magic, is go over some of the other old games that I've had. In particular, some of the Middle-earth Lord of the Rings themed stuff. I've got a small box of the old Middle-earth game, which had a lot of references to the book, which didn't even make it into the movies. And I'm surprised. And even later games, the Cordial of Rivendell that Elrond gives to the Fellowship has a card in there. It never showed up in any previous game, it wasn't in the movies, but it played a decent role in the books to help encourage them through Moria and through the snows of Caradhras. There's characters like Burgil and Prince Imrahil, who never made it into the movie either. I think Burgill never made it into any of the other card games, for that matter. But he was the tour guide, son of one of the guards who showed Pippin around Minas Tirith, for example. And I just love all those little tales that that game had.
All right, so let's all go over to Spencer McKay's raid. I'm right here. Hi. Go over there. Say hi. Say Spocat raid, and we'll see you guys soon.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be more prepared next time and be able to do Magic Mondays in the evening again.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
Monday night. Magic,
bye, everybody. Hit that link. Save it, and catch you next time. Say bye, Brindley.
If you're watching this later, leave a comment as to what set you'd like to see me approach next.
Yeah, please do.
Alliances or some of the older sets, Arabian Antiquities, Legends, or even the Portal 3 Kingdoms. Any of those would be something I'd be able to scrape something together for, and I think could be fun.
See you later. Thanks
Bye
for
for
watching. Appreciate you.
Bye.